What was the hardest thing you actually forgave someone for? How is your relationship with them today if you still talk to them? Easily forgiving my mom for years of child neglect and abuse. Hardest thing I've ever forgave someone for, but I needed to let it go for my sake. We never spoke much after that, and then she got cancer. We tried to give it a shot then, but it was too much damage done, and then she passed. Just a series of rough situations in a row. At the very least you were strong enough to be willing to forgive her in the end. That takes incredible strength. I forgave my dad for his drug abuse during my childhood. He lost his sobriety when I was 1 and didn't get clean till I was 15. He still doesn't know me very well. He thinks he does, but he's wrong. I'm not mad about the time lost, and I'm incredibly proud of his 5.5 years. I've forgiven him, but addiction has had a permanent effect on our relationship and on his brain. I love him, though. To be fair, I think most parents don't know their kids as well as they think they do. OBV your dad more so than most. Glad you're doing better though. He killed himself and blamed me for it in a note. It took a long time to understand that this was mental illness and not an attempt by a healthy person to hurt me more than anyone has ever hurt me before. I'm finally at a place where it just makes me sad that he's gone. That is beyond heartbreaking. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. My biological dad wrote me, 7-8, and my sister, 9-10, a letter. After years of inconsistent visitation, he was ready to give up his parental rights. Me and my sister sat on the living room floor while my mom and stepdad read us his letter, saying he didn't want us anymore and that my stepdad would be a much better father for us. Stepdad adopted my sister and I. 2 years later, biological dad had a son with another woman. 10 years later, he still has custody of that kid. It took me a long time to forgive him. I remember exactly where I was when I did. Spencer Lake Youth Camp. I was probably 16-17 yo. We have a relationship BC I turned 18 and went to find him. We've never talked a bit. I was 11 and I had just been diagnosed with skin cancer when my very abusive mother told me that God was punishing me for being a bad son. I forgave her when I went to church to get baptized because I realized I didn't have the time to be hateful like her. I forgave her for the things she has done and said to me, and I forgive her whenever she does anything because I know that my life has been shortened enough by the poor decisions I've made. It was hard. It was one of the few things I'm not sure I could ever do again, because she truly hurt me for years. She always told me I was a mistake and that I wasn't ever wanted, but I let it go and my heart stopped hurting. I know I've never had a mother, not really, and I'm glad I stopped lying to myself about it too. I hope you're doing better. I'm very sorry to hear that. Years of neglect. She's got some issues and doesn't know it. It took me a really long time to recognize that my mother does not in fact walk on water, and is human like the rest of us and is flawed and makes mistakes. She wasn't neglectful on purpose, and she can't admit it to herself or bring herself, so apologize. But I forgive her for everything anyway. You're a bigger person than I. More power to you, friend. When I was little, my older brother sexually abused me. That was almost 20 years ago and it still hurts to think about. The day I decided to forgive him was the first time either of us had cried in years. I'm a decently well-adjusted adult now. He is a decently well-adjusted adult now. We're pretty tight now, and I'm 100% certain that if he could go back in time and undo the past he would. Brother sexually abused me and my sister for 3 years and would come into our room every night and sit in the corner with a knife. Eventually my parents sent him to live with my grandparents and he beat the crap out of them. He's been in and out jail since and does a lot of drugs. I barely talk to him. It still affects me every day, especially my sex life with my husband, but I had to forgive him for my sake. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I can't say I had the same experience, but I know how it feels to see family go off the rails and not being able to do anything about it. I hope you're doing better now. I had to forgive my little sister for saying that I molested her when we were kids. She told the lie to an aunt when I was 22 and she was 18. Out of the blue. I'm female as well and she claimed that it happened back when I was 8 and she was 4 and that I got a bunch of men to molest her too. It was several months before I found out the details of what she said. I was sort of relieved when I heard that because obviously it makes the lie just sound completely ridiculous. We were very sheltered as kids, Mormon, homeschooled. Men were hardly ever around us other than family. She was doing a lot of drugs, crack, the bad crap, at the time, and I guess she wanted to blame her problems on me in a fricked up way. Maybe. I still hope to God that she doesn't have some false memory drug dream that she actually believes happened about it in her brain. That would break my heart. My ex sexually assaulting me multiple times and leaving me to die after drugging me haunted me for years and never really went away, but forgiving him let me move on with my life. We haven't talked in years. The only good thing in this comment was the last sentence. Frick people like this. My dad found me homeless on the streets suffering from mental illness. I had been hospitalized for it before. He didn't try to take me to the hospital or anything. He just gave me $40 and told me he'd pray for me, and just walked. I still have resentment, but I mostly got over it. A lot of people didn't want to help me and I was a lot to deal with, but it still hurts. I still love him and we talk pretty often, but once something like that happens you can't just forget it. It's tough. People talk about stigma of mental illness and how we should be open about it, but they want to hear I struggled with it and I'm doing better now. Not when you're in the midst of it, and I hope that changes. I'm very sorry this happened to you. I hope you are in a better place now. He cheated on me and got her pregnant. We divorced. Him leaving me in an apartment I couldn't afford. I forgave him because ironically I was offered a better life, in Hawaii, no less. Karma came back for him. He's twice divorced and the kid lives her grandmother. I occasionally talk him now, but can't bear to listen to him talk about his daughter since she's the kid I wouldn't give him. Burn that bridge. There is nothing left for you there. Let him wallow in the crap pool he created for himself, and enjoy your paradise. A friend beat his girlfriend savagely one night. He was a troubled but good guy until then, and I was the kind of friend who had his back when his stupidity won and he got in trouble, driving him to court, hugging him when he was scared about going to jail the first time. He came to me for support when he was facing down this particular assault charge. It was a line he'd never crossed and he crossed it with an arching abandon that I found disgusting. I told him to get fricked and die. Years later, our mutual female friend, the beaten one, contacted me. The situation had complexities. She had forgiven him and wished I would too. He was fighting cancer, though it was time and maturity and acceptance of her part in their fiery young love that had changed her feelings toward him less than the cancer, and had a desire to talk to me again but was scared to search me out. We'd both changed a lot. He'd gone pretty far down his hole before seeking help and really working to repair his life. The cancer had come along with perfect timing when he was finally becoming a real adult and member of society. I saw my old friend again, scared by some awful circumstance he found himself in, this time not his own fault, and felt the same need to be there for him, though I just didn't have patience for him anymore. But I had a special way with him, and my presence was what he needed. His mom and I coaxed him through chemo, and when he was declared cancer-free by his oncologist, the cracks in my anger with him fell apart. I still found it exhausting to be around him and kept him at arm's length, but I was proud of him just the same. My heart felt okay with him, but I never told him that. I didn't feel like he necessarily earned hearing it, but he knew, and he knew I knew, and that was more how we were anyway. Of course the cancer came back a couple years later, and after getting the diagnosis he went home, sent me an email telling me what I'd always meant to him, and hanged himself. So it goes. So it goes. My brother lost contact with us when I was about 8-9. I was too young to really remember life with him, but in like 6th grade I was upset about it. He left with nothing for us to remember him by except a pair of earrings he sent me for my 10th birthday, another thing I don't really remember getting, just having. As I got older it was easier to accept that he left because of his multiple mental illnesses and not because he was angry with me or my family. I've learned to forgive him. I treasure the earrings he got me now. It proves that even through his haze he cared about me, but sometimes it still hurts to think about after all this time. I may never have a chance to see him again. I just wish I could see him again and thank him, and tell him we all forgive him. He cheated once, told me about it the next day, expressed genuine remorse. 3 years later we got married. 10 years after that we're still together. Our marriage is still monogamous and has been genuinely happy. It wasn't hard to forgive, but was hard to forget. It hurt so much. It still hurts to think about it, and probably always will. Yet I don't regret staying with him. He's the love of my life. My best friend's boyfriend and his friend sexually assaulted me. I told her, and she made excuses for him like, he didn't think you actually meant no. He thought you were playing. He does it to me. It's just how he is, etc. And continued to date him. She made them apologize, and it really wasn't sincere and more of an I'm sorry if you think something happened that didn't happen. I'd been living with her, so this caused me to move out, but I stayed friends with her cause it was her first boyfriend and I told myself she was hurting. My only stipulation was that when we hung out, it was when he wasn't around. He cheated on her and left her, but they stayed friends. Her birthday rolled around and I said that she and I could do our own thing another time, and she could have him at her party. She insisted I come, and said he wouldn't be there. Surprise surprise, he showed up and she spent 3 hours outside with him, then came inside and yelled at me for forcing her to choose. Months later she got an apartment with his friend, the other participant. Her ex came over to hang out and after she went to bed, snuck into her room and raped her. After that she hated him, but not the friend. That was in high school and I know teenagers are dumb, so I've mostly forgiven her. We talk a lot still, and she visits occasionally. The remaining rift is because she still brings it up every year or two. It's been 11 years even when I ask her not to, because I know she feels guilty, but I'd rather just forget it and move on. I forgave him for his addiction, which led to years of toxic, codependent behavior. As cliche as it sounds, I was blinded by love and refused to see what everyone else saw, that he was lying to my face about abusing his prescriptions pills. I believed his stories, thinking there was no way someone could come up with something so believable, but I knew something was off about him. I chalked it up to the Lyme disease since he blamed everything on that. I lost myself trying to save him. Stupidly, I thought it was my job to make him better, which in turn made me worse. In a fit of overwhelming anxiety, panic, and fear of losing him, I tried committing suicide. I found my way back to him needing to make us work. That was until I found needles in his shorts doing laundry one day. The blow to my gut is something I'll never forget. I was the world's biggest fool. Determined to move on and find myself again, I broke up with him, although I contacted him every day to check up on him. 2 weeks later I found out I was pregnant. We got back together. He got help, and we had a baby girl. The first 2 years of her life were pure bliss until I noticed the same behavior creeping back. After a psychotic break led him to get arrested and hospitalized, I knew it was best to let go. I couldn't believe anything he told me anymore. He didn't see her again until she was almost 4. Some of that was because I got an order of protection for the first few months, and then because I had full custody and he was to have visitations. During that time he met another woman and had a son with her. Fast forward, we're good friends and co-parent my daughter together. We share our time with her, and I'm also really good friends with his girlfriend and have even babysat their little boy. They seem happy, and while I'm no longer in love with him, sometimes I'll catch myself thinking about the memories we had and how we ended up where we are now. Forgiving myself for being so foolish and hurting my family by trying to kill myself, however, is something I still have yet to figure out. We, or rather spouse, stupidly loaned $1,500 to a nephew. His mother asked for it, begged spouse for it, because he lost money in a casino and his loan shark is threatening to break a leg. She swore she would pay us back. Later, after bugging her for a while just to get 1 month's payment, she swore that she didn't say that and that her son, the nephew, would pay us back. He has never repaid us a dime. In fact, we haven't seen him for 30+ years. They say, if you've got toxic people in your life, loan them money. You'll never see them again. Probably the best $1,500 you'll ever spend. My bio dad basically abandoned me when I was 8, citing the fact that I wouldn't dance with him at a father-daughter dance. The reality of the situation is that his rough upbringing in rural Appalachia along with multiple mental illnesses made him cling to any woman who would give him attention. And every single time she ended up being toxic or just straight up abusive. His current partner is always more important than the children from his previous marriage. He views us a lost cause because he knows he wasn't a great parent. So he tries to cultivate a new, perfect life when the old one falls apart. Dude's built 4 families now and goes through the exact same cycle every single time. As an adult, the nastier parts of the diseases I inherited from him began to show. It's a full-time job trying to reel yourself in. It's like I'm not even in control sometimes. I understand exactly his thought processes now and why he did what did and continues to do what he does. I try to do the opposite of what he does, but boy is it freaking hard. I've forgiven him because mental illness is one sick sob and I know for a fact I'm only experiencing a fraction of what he has to deal with on a daily basis. Nowadays we're more like friends. We still talk, and the funny thing is that we are so similar. We interact on a level that I've never experienced with literally anyone else, even with all the bitterness and resentment thrown in there. He's almost like my twin on so many levels. People all the time come up to me and ask if I'm his kid because I look and take after him almost 100% LMAO. I forgave my girlfriend after she cheated on me. I didn't actually forgive her for some time after that, nearly a year. Then 3 months after I actually forgave her, she did it again. I wasn't going to go through that again. The same day, however, I found out she cheated on me. I found out a good friend of mine cheated on his girlfriend. Another good friend of mine. I think it was honestly harder for me to forgive him than it was for me to forgive my girlfriend. He and I are fine now, but there's still an awkwardness there, because he knows he's lost most of my respect. My mom was incredibly abusive towards my dad growing up, and a terrible alcoholic. I grew up seeing her as a monster. She ended up having a massive stroke, and suffered a lot of brain damage. It's hard to look at her sometimes, but she's now my best friend. She always talks about how much she loves her whole family, including my dad, and never drinks anymore. Forgiving her was hard, but she's a different person. The stroke and brain damage changed her in a way. She's very dependent on us for many things. It's difficult to take my anger out on someone who is helpless. I don't hate her. I hate who she used to be. Same thing happened with my grandfather. After his first stroke, he went from hellraiser to sweet old man. Funny how that works. I'm seeing all these replies about actual struggles and now I feel stupid because my answer was forgiving my friend for spilling my orange juice in 2nd grade. A true crime. I'm amazed you had it in you to forgive them. When I was in 2nd grade, my dad had an affair with an older woman he worked with. My mom found out and was distraught. For some reason, she decided to confide in me. 7 years old, the middle child, older brother, younger sister. I understood, but not fully, not until my mom took me to meet this woman, in the hopes that it would make the woman realize that she was taking part in the destruction of a family, of the lives of 3 children. Ultimately, it just led to my destruction. It worked. Kind of. My dad came home and ended the affair, but I don't think he did it for my mom so much as he hated seeing me brought into things. So my parents got back together and to this day seem happy. I'm 26 now. Both of my siblings are in happy, long-term relationships, and I can't trust anyone. Haven't had a boyfriend since I was 14. Haven't ever told a guy I love them. Haven't had sober sex. I know this thread is about forgiving the person in question and moving on. Problem is I'm still not sure I forgive either of my parents for what they put me through. My former best friend attended a party hosted by someone who sexually assaulted me. It was a pretty big gut punch, but what made it worse is that we discussed the party earlier and he agreed not to go because he knew it would be a pretty crappy thing to do. When I saw photos of him and my sexual assaulter having a laugh together, I felt so betrayed. Now we don't really talk because I have loyal friends that respect boundaries and my feelings. My ex kissed one of her co-workers and for some reason I stayed with her thinking things were gonna get better. They didn't. It was hard to look past it, and we broke up 6 months after in okay terms. Looking back on it, I should have let her go as soon as it happened. It would have saved me a lot of pain. I was molested by an older cousin as a preteen, early teen. We lived at grandma's. Would have likely gone homeless otherwise. Told my parents. Nothing was done. I understood we needed a roof over our heads. Later an uncle, married into a family and well off, raped me, molested me. My parents have maintained contact with both. So long as I'm not expected to deal with them and nothing happens to my younger sisters, I've been tolerant. But forgave my mom mostly. Skewed sense of normalcy and tolerated far too much. Feel more sorry for her and having been so mistreated to put up with these kinds of people. My still best friend made out with my high school GF. She was a hardcore manipulator who cheated on me with more people than I can recall, and used a rehearsed string to texts to make this guy think she was single as of that moment and she only wanted whatever guy she was talking to. Me and my dude realized what had happened. She was so convincing. It's clear she wasn't mentally stable. I saw the text exchanges with several different guys. Me and my dude were good. It took a few months before we confronted the issue, but the common denominator was her, and we weren't the only ones. She actually worked her way through almost every dude we knew within 2 years. It was almost impressive. We got to the point where we almost had a rehab course ready when another friend couldn't take her anymore. Alright, man, it's fine. Come on over, we'll explain everything. A good friend once speculated that the word forgiveness implied that it had to happen before the offense was committed. That's not correct, by the way, but it has been my practice ever since I heard him say it. People, in my experience, as a general rule, strive to do what they feel is right and good. Offenses are almost always unintentional in that context, so it's difficult to get too angry. And on the rare occasions I suspect someone of conscious ill intent or malice, I interpret this as a person overflowing with pain. As another general rule, people that intentionally hurt others are attempting to relieve their own suffering by desperately dumping it on someone else, which only makes them hurt worse. And it's infinitely more difficult to be angry with them. So, there's really nothing to forgive anyway. That being said, I don't forget a fricking thing. Just because I understand why someone hurt me doesn't mean I can't allow them to keep doing it. I then must kindly commit a sympathy murder of compassion on them. I am going to think about what you said here for the rest of my life. A roommate kept telling me all the reasons I shouldn't speak to my ex and how terrible of a person she is. A group of us go out to the bar and we happen to see a couple of my ex's friends there. My roommate keeps telling me I should try to hook up with one of them. He says it will make my ex really upset. I ignore him and brush it off. He keeps making comments like this throughout the night. A few days later I am talking to my ex. We are on good terms, and she is telling how odd it is that my roommate keeps messaging her randomly trying to start a conversation with her. Lost a lot of respect for him there, and for a while I tried my best to avoid him. He lacks camaraderie and is certain he does not have the best interest of anyone in mind. This is how he is as a person. And I realize that once I graduate I will never have to deal with him again. I forgave him so it's not awkward for the rest of the time we have left. However, I certainly keep an eye out for his antics. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with them, and forgiving someone doesn't make what they did okay. Forgiveness means that you release yourself from being angry and hung up on it. I forgave my abusive ex-husband, but I will never speak to him or have a relationship with him again. Last year I finally decided to forgive the guy who killed my stepmom in an accident that also left my dad with permanent disabilities and effectively ended my childhood. I have no relationship with this person so that hasn't changed, but after being involved in a minor car accident, I have more empathy for their experience. Sometimes the slightest, stupid decision can have bad consequences. Mine was turning the windshield wiper fluid on so I could see, causing the window to freeze up and me not being able to stop in time as I could not see the car in front of me or that it had slowed down dramatically, causing me to hit their bumper. For him, it was trying to make it through a red light to get back to work and go home early. Even though he increased his speed, he didn't make it into the intersection until my dad and stepmom were given the green and so he hit them. The increased speed made the accident all the worse. I hope he has found peace and was able to change his life for the better since then. I had to forgive my mother for her attempted suicide. I didn't fully understand her pain and reasoning until years later when I was suicidal myself. We're very close, and in the past few years we have been able to talk openly about it. I'm really lucky. My friend messaged me out of the blue with a nasty message about how she didn't need me in her life and that I was a negative influence on her and that she'll pray for me. It turns out she got diagnosis with autism and other issues around the same time. She did end up apologizing and I did forgive her, we just don't talk anymore. She left me drunk and alone at a party in a town where I didn't know anyone because of a petty drunk spat over a boy. I thought of her like a sister, and a defining point of our friendship was opening up over our respective sexual assaults, which both took place at parties while we were drunk. So she knew how I felt about being vulnerable when drunk with strangers and understood the feeling firsthand, and she still left me. When she apologized later, she said that she knew one of the guys at the party would take care of me, but I had known him for a grand total of like 2 hours at the time, so even if she knew I was safe, I hadn't known I was safe, and her apology was just really self-centered. The argument had been based on a misunderstanding on her part, and she apologized for getting mad about the misunderstanding. But the fact was, even if things had happened the way she thought they did, she was still deeply in the wrong. I didn't speak to her for about a week, not because I was angry still, but more because I just didn't know what to say to her. I felt like her actions had clearly confirmed she valued our relationship less than some guy in the past. I had turned down a guy I really liked because I knew it would make the relationship between her and I weird, and at that moment, I knew that, without a doubt, she would not do the same. She put her hurt feelings over this guy that I don't even think either of us really cared about over my safety, and that was really hard to accept, even though I'd kind of been getting hints of our one-sided relationship for months. Because the thing is, I know I'm important to her. I know she cares about me deeply. She treats me better than she treats most people. But that doesn't mean I should let her treat me badly, and that was a hard realization. I eventually forgave her, but I've kind of cut my emotional cord with her. At one point in my life, I would have done anything for her, and now I'm at the point where if I'm in the middle of a particularly good TV episode and she calls, I'll decline it. I forgave my dad for the physical abuse he inflicted on me as a child. I forgave him 8 years after I last spoke to him when I was identifying his body in the morgue. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.